Welcome to the Bitcoin Capitalist Show. Today we got Joshua Jake. He's one of the top TikTokers. I've been following this guy for a long time. He's got a lot of really, good content. And, with so many scammers in the space, it's refreshing to, watch this guy. So, introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. There's a lot of people out there that are initially just grifters. They don't actually know anything about the industry. They haven't worked in it. And whether or not they actually made money in the industry, they are out there proclaiming that they're self-proclaimed gurus of the industry selling, $99 courses. So, dude, thank you for having me today, man. I know my content's definitely shifted a lot over the years towards more Bitcoin focused, but yeah, I've been in the industry for a very long time. I come from TikTok. I'm now on YouTube. I'm doing some shows for Cryptos Are Us now, which is a pretty large person on YouTube as well. And I got a lot of things going on. I'm involved with the AI sector, now getting a lot more involved with decentralized science. I'll be going out to some laboratories and meeting some scientists that are actually working on longevity and blockchain together. So I'm excited for the conversation today. I'm ready to see where it goes.
So how long have you actually been, posting your content on TikTok? Because I'm pretty new on there, and I'm just curious, how long have you been, in the game of producing on TikTok?
Yeah, so started in 2021, I think March. So just over 2 years at this point. I was in crypto. I got in crypto in 2019, late 2019. And then obviously everything happened through COVID, but I was just constantly investing and doing, investing my stimulus money and ended up making just disgusting amount of money.
Everyone at home throwing that Robinhood money and betting on, crypto. They had nothing else to gamble on.
Nothing else. I was a college student that was broke and ended up making well over 6 figures doing so. And so I was like, what the heck? And so similar to your perspective, I was actually an XRP maximalist, unfortunately, when I first came into crypto. But like watching TikTokers that were talking about crypto, I just knew, even though I knew nothing back then, I still knew way more than they did. And so it was kind of like I wanted to just produce content that had some value to it. That's where I started, man.
Yeah, I mean, I look at all the crypto influencers and stuff, and the problem with it is it's very hard to monetize it and make money on it. So most of these guys, they want to capitalize once they get influence, and it's either you can pump these shit coins or you sell cores or whatnot. It's very, and especially in Bitcoin, there's no CEO of Bitcoin. No one's paying you to promote Bitcoin. So it's very hard for people to make money in the crypto space. And I've seen, a lot of people that were kind of Bitcoin maxis, and then all of a sudden they're, hey, join my, special Telegram and we'll pump this coin together. And unfortunately, I probably lose a lot of viewers because I'm like, I'm not talking about every single coin out there, hey, this is going to be the next 10x, because trading is so difficult and very few people are going to make, money at it. And I got educated by like listening to a lot of Max Kaiser back in the day, and he really scared me out of the shit coins. Because at some point I was like, hey, when they print all this money, all these shit coins are going to go up. And I was invested in a lot of these coins that had, very early, like Chainlink and all this stuff. And I got out way too early because I was like, Bitcoin's going to go up. I would have made like 20, 30 X's. I was really early on a lot of the stuff. And I kind of got scared out of it. I regret that a little bit, but at the end of the day, you don't know when, you're going to get rug pulled on a lot of these projects, and I'll say it like this, like, hey, Bitcoin's a digital commodities. All these other ones are stocks. Like you can invest in, they're going to go up and down, but, and even if you do win, you can be on FTX and then you lose all your money on the exchanges. And these exchanges are the Wild West right now. You just don't know, what's behind the scenes and how liquid, and how do you feel about Binance right now? How do you think they're in trouble, or you think it's a lot of just BS in the market, people saying?
So I'm very critical on Binance. CZ blocked me about a year ago now, which is fun. It's a fun little.
Hey, when you're big enough where they block you, that's a good thing.
I was like, hey, that means I was like, CZ watched one of my videos. That's cool.
You're on the radar.
Yeah. So for Binance, I think they're kind of in the same position as a BlackRock, so to speak. Now, not obviously in the same size and perspective as the asset management industry, but in the sense that, Bitfinex, Tether, Binance, they've all been kind of early on adopters to this. And if you look through like the Wangjing Blockchain Labs, which funded Ethereum, a lot of the original wallets from the Ethereum Foundation kind of dispersed into the original Bitcoin dev wallets, or not the Bitcoin devs, but sorry, the Binance dev wallets, Coinbase dev wallets, all these different wallets. And so the machine that was created in 2015 that rolled into Binance, and Binance now ultimately being the majority of the volume in the industry, I've been just highly critical ever since I found out that they owned CoinMarketCap and rated themselves at a 9.9% score. They're like, hey, we're the safest company out there for your exchange and storing your crypto. And the next one was Coinbase, and it dropped to an 8. And so I was like, okay, well, that's just media bias right there, because they won't even show us their reserves. And so, from that moment when I really started calling them out about, it's probably been a year and a half, 2 years at this point. But how I look at it is, the true value of the industry is going to be the stablecoin industry. So whoever controls the stablecoins is making just disgustingly easy money, because all stablecoins do are they're taking $1 from you, giving you a digital dollar, and putting that dollar in US treasuries and earning an interest rate on it. And so I've always seen that Binance having that control and that liquidity, as BlackRock and these asset managers are going to come in and absorb more and more of the industry, they're going to want to absorb the stablecoin aspect, because they're going to want to control the liquidity and farm 5.5% interest on it and just print endless amount of stablecoins. It's fractional banking 2.0.
I used to be a huge skeptic of USDT and the stablecoins, because I was such a Bitcoin maxi. And then when I started doing my business in Latin America, I realized how you need these coins to get in and out of the market. And also USDT Tether, they're buying Bitcoin now, putting it on their balance sheet.
Yep.
Bitcoin and USDT are two good things. And I don't know how legit a lot of these other coins are, but I know USDT is making all the right moves and they're winning a lot of people over too. And going back to Binance, another reason why they could be in trouble is, BlackRock, all these big companies, they're not stupid. They know what you and I know about what Bitcoin is, and people want to accumulate as much as they can for as cheap as they can. And, these big corporations, you can't tell me they don't control the SEC and a lot of the media and whatnot. Yeah. So also, and Bitcoin, went skyrocketed 69,000. All these companies are like, oh shoot, we missed this freaking train. We got to bring the price back down. You go out and you take out some of these coins and you take out Binance and some of these exchanges, boom, the price collapses back down. They accumulate a ton of Bitcoin. So they have a huge target because, big companies, even countries, they want to accumulate and they want to see the price down. So if you attack these exchanges, which all this leverage exists, all these Bitcoins are going to come puke back onto the market. So that's kind of another theory I have too.
Yeah. And so jumping off that is where I go, okay, so what's the price point then that now BlackRock, we know these companies are invested. They own the majority of the Bitcoin miners. They're invested into USDC. They manage the reserves. They're invested into NCR and Blackhawk, which are your Lightning Network point of sale systems that are being implemented. So if they're not at this point, they're massively invested. And so that's where I say, I don't think Binance necessarily is going to fail, but I do see them getting completely pushed out of the United States. We saw that with Paxos. So I was projecting that was going to happen way before with BUSD. I was like, BUSD is going to get pushed out because they're going to want to control the markets here with USDC. They want the stablecoin liquidity. And so it's I think they're too big to fail. I don't know if they'll collapse, but I do believe that they're going to get pushed out and liquidity is going to be forced to a US, I would say, stable coin, in my opinion. Tether's also, they've been interesting. Their history is very interesting, but they also are now getting they're into Bitcoin mining and creating mempools. So they're backed, their reserves are backed, and they're completely shifting their models. And is why I think they're going to stay relevant as well. But you just had Coinbase delist 80 pairs of USDT. So it's there's now favoring USDC. And then now you're realizing the Federal Reserve with what they're doing is they're trying to get regulatory oversight and they're trying to force stable coins to have 100% reserves backed by US dollars because they see it as private money.
What do you think the safest exchange is right now?
Oh, God. I would arguably
it's just Russian roulette, knowing who's
I'm get it off the exchange.
Yeah, I know.
I have that but I would say Coinbase. I would have to say Coinbase. Yeah. Yeah.
So a little bit about my background is I just, listen to Max Kaiser. I started buying Bitcoin. I was kind of working in corporate America. And then I was like, how do I start a Bitcoin business? And I was getting my residency down in Panama during COVID because I was like, I got to get a ticket out of town, and you have to create a corporation there to start to get your residency. So I've started doing the Bitcoin ATMs in Latin America, and I put all the first machines in a lot of these Latin American countries. Wow. But it's crazy because, you listen to all these, I listened to Jack Mallers and kind of got motivated. I was like, hey, I'm going to go out and do this. But there's no one else really doing this. I thought there would be a lot of people and there's billions of dollars, and like no one's really trying to spread Bitcoin on the ground for adoption. It's very tough doing this, but there's not a lot of people doing what I'm doing, bringing Bitcoin. And what people don't realize is how many people are unbanked in Latin America. You're looking at, in some of these countries, 40% people don't have bank accounts. And this is why, and also USDT is so important, is because people like in the US, you can just wire transfer your money to a Coinbase or Gemini and buy, crypto. You cannot do that in Panama and these countries, because if you wire transfer or say you withdraw cash from Binance, they freeze your account and take all of your money. So the gray market of these cash Bitcoin USDT markets is enormous in Latin America, because none of the banks will correspond with crypto exchanges. So there's these giant like OTC dealers. They're almost like drug dealers, and you just give them cash, they give you USDT, and then you do it, and it's all kind of sketchy, right? So that's why like ATM markets are astronomically big, in these countries, is because you can't just go on Swamp Bitcoin and buy for 1%, because you can't move, your money. And, you look at countries like Argentina right now, where, they limit dollar withdrawals and you can't move your money. Though USDT and Bitcoin adoption is just going crazy there, because people need to move their money in and out of the country. And these are the answer right now. You're going to see the Bitcoin adoption in countries where they need it the most, like Argentina, countries where it's like they're 100%, inflation. These are going to be the first, adopters of Bitcoin.
Yeah. And, to your point that say not a lot of people doing it, is I honestly think it's just because Bitcoin's got a very bad rep. I look at the same perspective is I call Bitcoin the greatest commodity, and everything else is just a software service wrapped in a utility token pumped by a VC. And so, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. There's going to be a market for that. VCs are going to market it, scale it, pump it, bull run. It's going to repeat itself. But, people like to say that, Bitcoin's slow, it's outdated, it's bad technology, it's bad for the environment. And I still to this day think Bitcoin's the most misunderstood crypto on the market, because every other crypto in the market is advocating against Bitcoin. They're more decentralized, more scalable, or more secure, which are all, in my opinion, probably pretty
have you ever noticed that these problems that Bitcoin has, they eventually get solved? It's too slow. Then there's second layer. There's the Lightning Network. It's not anonymous. Then there's CoinJoin. So like all these people, as because it's a public ledger. You want to be anonymous. There's ways to do it through the Wasabi network to mix match your Bitcoin. There's no need for Monero. It's too slow. It's called the Lightning Network, and it's growing exponentially. In the next bull market, it's going to be crazy, and it's going to be the rails to all these payment systems. I'm curious though, because when Bitcoin, like in my philosophy, I think when Bitcoin goes over 100,000, the U.S. government and global governments aren't going to take it as a joke anymore, and the real crackdowns are going to come. And this is why these big Bitcoin mining companies that are investing, like Riot Blockchain in Texas, I think they are horribly misled, because they're going to get shut down. You have the Elizabeth Warrens of the world. They're telling you what they're going to do. Listen to them. They say they're going to do a war against crypto. They're blaming it for the environmental stuff. The government's financing Greenpeace against the Bitcoin movement. They're giving them money to go out and attack it, right? Why aren't they giving them money to go attack gold? Because they don't see it as a threat. So as it becomes more, adopted, the threats are going to get bigger and bigger. And I think these mines are just going to get shut down in the U.S. That's why I'm a big advocate for Bitcoin mining, in Latin America and outside of the U.S. right now.
Yeah, that's definitely like it's a very debated, controversial topic, I would say. In my perspective, I look at Bitcoin mining specifically as like true ESG. Like it's what everything that ESG wanted to be with carbon credits, which is now like the biggest scam and fraud that exists. It can actually fix that. And it's a win-win-win for everybody in the United States. So I work with a lot of companies out here. I've been trying to actually get landfills to convert their emissions into Bitcoin mining out here through modulars. But I think like ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Crusoe Energy is actually a huge part of this with the partnerships. I'm sure you're aware of them with the flare emissions and converting methane emissions. I think there is a world where this exists, where Elizabeth Warren screams, but Elizabeth Warren fails all the time. She lost the battle against Janet Yellen with BlackRock in 2020 against Janet Yellen when they became too big to fail. That was, thanks to Janet Yellen, our U.S. Treasury. So BlackRock's got all these politicians in. And if they own and control those, I would argue that, there's also a very clear path that we start seeing these asset managers that are pushing ESG, forcing these companies into compliance to mitigate their carbon emissions through Bitcoin modulars with the companies that they own. Yeah. And so Riot, you just saw it with the $31 million worth of power credits for shutting down their power grid. They're stabilizing power grids in Texas. You have multiple companies
because they couldn't mine at a profit right now. So instead of mining, not making any money, they'd make more money off of selling the energy back to the state is what pretty much happened. And what I've seen is like Compass Mining and a lot of these US where you can, for retail investors, they're like almost pretty much Ponzi schemes because they, with electricity costs and what their fees are, they're not making money right now. I have friends that have miners at like Compass, and it's just like, they keep saying the machines aren't working. They're never plugged in. To get your machines back, they want like a crazy amount. That's why, I'm doing Bitcoin mining in Paraguay, and the energy is extremely cheap. It's sustainable energy. They have the third largest hydroelectric dam in the world, Itapu Dam, and they have more energy than they know what to do with. So they usually sell it back to Brazil for pennies on the dollar because they couldn't export it anywhere else. But then here comes Bitcoin. Now you can export this energy, and that's where you're talking about natural gas, all this trapped energy. You can now export it, with Bitcoin. But I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this. Like, the reason I wasn't more bullish on Bitcoin earlier was I'm like, it's gonna get banned, and it's a threat to the dollar. And if you remember, at the end of the Trump administration, he literally came out and he was like, Bitcoin is a threat to the dollar. He's pro-America, pro-dollar. I get it. And he, what was the Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary? He goes, his number one priority is to take down Bitcoin. And then the whole Jan 6 or whatever happened, and nothing ever got done with Bitcoin. And then Biden became president, and there's been nothing really attacking Bitcoin. And I didn't think it was going to get this adopted, and then all of a sudden MicroStrategy, and it starts getting into Wall Street. I thought it was going to get, cut off at the knees. And, now it's at the point where Bitcoin's too big to be stopped. I mean, the mining's global. It's going to be around for a while. I'm just interested in how the U.S. is going to respond when it really starts kicking up and the U.S. enters a financial crisis again.
Yeah, so that's why I don't think, even if the miners were forced out of the States, like, I think that'd be at a point where it's a threat to the U.S. dollar. Yeah. And in that theory, the dollar is dropping in value and people are trying to find that store of value. And it's like, I think that would just benefit Bitcoin elsewhere anyways. And you're going to see the adoption in places like Paraguay with hydro dams that are selling off, pennies for kilowatts per hour. But there is the path. I've spoken to a lot of miners out here that there is a path where, capturing that stuck energy, it's starting to be more access. And there's a lot of breakthroughs in the United States right now, specifically in the landfill sector or the natural gas positions, where they will be able to access the government subsidiaries for the carbon credits. And if they can pivot to that path, I mean, you're talking about kilowatts that under 3 cents per hour being sold, which, theoretically with the Bitcoin halving coming up, I think a lot of miners are going to get kicked to the curb, because the successful miners that are in the States, at least, they have to provide other value as well through data centers and other mining mechanisms that they can't just mine Bitcoin, right? So it's interesting.
Energy is too expensive in the US. I think the wholesale cost in Paraguay is like 4 cents, and then we offer hosting fees like 6 cents. And when people are looking at the machines, you got to have a machine that's at least over 100 terahashes to make money. So when you see these really cheap machines, that's because they're not mining at a profitable level right now.
Well, are you worried about like the Chips Plan 4 Act, for example? We're bringing back semiconductor production to the States, even though that's a very interesting bill, because Bitmain and MicroBT are still out of Hong Kong and still, the biggest producers for Bitcoin mining semiconductors. But there could also be a point. What if the U.S. decides to control the mempools and, build a stronger hash machine, and the only way you can get those semiconductors are from the U.S. and they start controlling that ecosystem?
I've written about this because China was the largest Bitcoin miner. They shot themselves in the foot, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to ban this." And I wrote a thing, and it's been compared. The treasure fleet back in the day, China had one of the largest navies in the world. And it was way ahead of its time, and the merchants were becoming wealthy and powerful. And the emperor got jealous, and he had the army burn the whole Navy to the ground and China turned inward and it really cost them. And it's kind of the same thing. They were like, oh, we can't control this because they're control freaks and they ban it. And now the US is the largest, Bitcoin mining in the world with like 35% or something like that. And what we're going to see in the future is hash wars of all these countries mining it. And I also am a big believer in buying your own Bitcoin mining machine, because say it gets banned in a lot of these countries, like your ability to buy it like via an app and like really easily could go bye-bye. And what I can think you'll see in the future is when Bitcoin's price is just, going ballistic, when we start having real inflation and people aren't selling, the only way you're going to get it is via private sales from miners to customers, where BlackRock, either they're going to buy these mining farms, which if you look at stocks, they own a chunk of all these mining stocks.
Yep.
How many of these companies own MicroStrategies? They're indirectly investing in this. They're either going to own these mining facilities, or these mining facilities are going to do deals and sell directly to BlackRock, and they'll front them capital and stuff. And that's what you're going to see. And the average Joe, I think your days are going to be limited to be able to go on Gemini and stuff and buy these, deals, either by government kind of banning it, or it's just not going to be enough available for sale. We're kind of in the eye of the hurricane.
That's why when I look at like the Bitcoin Spot ETF that's coming out, BlackRock's obviously filing for that. It's like, so what's the end game here for them is, if they get that approval, you're going to have every financial advisor in the world pitching, hey, you should allocate 1% to 2% of your portfolio for your retirement into Bitcoin mining to hedge yourself. And they're getting obviously the management fees and everything on the back end. And they're making, so like you're saying, that's even another way that they can profit in the future. All points like lead to, like I just say, more Bitcoin adoption. It's at this point, it's inevitable. So, if the US is going to shoot ourselves in the foot, with BlackRock and the asset managers having so much control over the Federal Reserve and the revolving door, I mean, they have the economic advisor to Biden is Brian Reese. He's from, BlackRock. It's like, I don't know. It's impossible to say
there's a lot of mixed signals, because you got Wall Street, which is pretty powerful, adopting, but it's a threat. It's still a threat to the dollar. And, we're going to be entering a scenario where, a lot of American banks are going to be failing again. They're going to be getting nationalized, and Bitcoin could just go parabolic. And and Bitcoin is a truth barometer on the U.S. financial system and inflation. And it's embarrassing to the U.S. government when, you're going to have Bitcoin at $100,000. That's why gold is like one of the most manipulated assets, because it's a truth barometer. But they, figured a way to control the price. There's no free market in the precious metals, and the banks control, the prices.
I'd argue the same with Bitcoin. I mean, you got mempool jockeying happening massively. I mean, asset managers can see within 10 minutes and front load a transaction if they want to short the market on us, which is why I want that decentralized.
I think there is price manipulations in Bitcoin, but as it gets bigger, the money we're talking about is going to get harder and harder for people to manipulate the price. But you look at all these exchanges; they front run everyone's trades. Like you're going to make all this money trading, right? Go to Binance; they're trading against you. Like this is common knowledge. You're signing up for these courses, and you're putting your $5,000 in. They're trading against you, and they can see where everyone's liquidation is, and then they're gonna dump the 1,000 Bitcoin on the market or whatever, and then bring down the price 2%. All these people get liquidated, and then they buy. They can see where it's like the cheat code.
They act as the hedge fund and the market maker.
Yeah,
that shouldn't be allowed.
Or if they're colluding together. And like I got to the point where it's like the system's so corrupt. Like you just opt out and buy Bitcoin. Like there's no fixing it. Like I'm sure you probably read Michael Lewis's like Fast Boys, which is about the high frequency trading, where literally this guy built a cable that was internet that was 3 seconds faster than Wall Street, and he would front run every trade and make billions and billions of dollars. And when the CFC or whatever regulatory body looked at that, they just let it go. And then all the other, exchange market makers all front run your trades. So when you were doing like Scott Trade or whatever, they would sell that data to, the large hedge funds of the world. And then they would front run every trade and make those like little percentages, but they're doing it on billions and billions of dollars. And the government says, there's nothing wrong with that. So, but they're cheating everyone out of these fractions of a penny. And, nothing ever got done with that.
This is... go ahead. Yeah, my bad. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was finished. But
yeah, I was gonna say. So this is where I have an interesting theory. I think you'll like.
Okay.
Is I think what if Bitcoin is not a solution to fractional banking, it's a cure. And what I mean by that is to all of the points that you're making where, down the line, you might be forced to go through a miner. You're saying that could be a route where you have to go through an OTC or to a miner to actually purchase that Bitcoin. And if you don't own your own miner now, you're going to be forced into that in 5-10 years. Well, if you look at like the 35 bills that are being passed through Congress right now, and then like what the Federal Reserve is trying to do, it's stepping in and controlling the stablecoin supply industry. We could also see a future where the Federal Reserve regulates and oversees, and this happened with the OCC, the Office of Comptroller of Currency, through multiple letters since 2014 all the way up to 2020, has established that if national banks want to issue a digital deposit or a digital dollar or stablecoin, that they would have to go through the stablecoin, an oversight committee through the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. And if we get to that point, and we get to a point in these markets where the feds, like we saw what happened with Paxos, they pushed out BUSD for no freaking reason. They said, oh, we're going to get sued. And then literally a year later, they issue PayPal's USD, right? The same exact white label currency, but they pushed out Binance. If we get to a future where the Federal Reserve controls the stablecoin market because they win it as its private money, this is where I argue the United States never is going to need a CBDC, because if they control the stablecoins, they make it where every single on-ramp and off-ramp, if you want to buy Bitcoin, you have to buy USDC, and every single exchange is going to be earning that 5.5% interest or whatever the interest is on the US Treasuries in a down market, and it allows these companies to print an endless amount of money. So it's like fractional banking with extra steps.
Yeah.
And so I'm cautious on that, is like a whole nother outlook.
Well, what's interesting, what I've experienced from my firsthand perspective in, Central and South America, I'm obviously pessimistic, like long-term, like I think the dollar isn't going to be a world reserve currency, but in the short to medium term, the dollar is expanding wildly. So in developing countries, what do people, everyone wants dollars right now. Argentina, Paraguay, everyone wants king dollar, and the dollar and Bitcoin are expanding. It's not there, it's not just, oh, Bitcoin, the dollar is going to collapse. They're both growing in adoption. So as the dollar is getting stronger, all of these developing countries, Chile, all their currencies are crashing against the dollar. So the people want to save, a hard asset. They want dollars right now. And so it's like, I don't know if that's by design or whatnot, but there's no replacement. Everyone's like, oh, the Chinese are going to internationalize their currency. No one uses the Chinese yuan. It's not anywhere. You can't exchange it anywhere in Central and South America. It's the dollar, and everyone's getting out of their local currencies and into the dollar. So it's kind of this weird, thing where I don't know if it's genius or what, but the dollar is growing globally.
Well, you know who owns the patent to SHA, right? SHA 256?
Who?
Bitcoin standard? The NSA.
Okay.
Like the National Security Association literally developed it. And so they have the patent, which is, because if you look at the history of cryptography, I don't know if you've gone into like Bill Clinton administration with like this is where XRP holders go, oh, David Schwartz is Satoshi. No, he just worked for like the Department of Defense or the NSA. But like cryptography was very US based up until the late 1990s, where Bill Clinton passed a bill and opened it up to the public. And it was like, hey, we should build off this and incentivize the, creations of this. So like the cypherpunks and like the origin of them is very skeptical and aligns with the Department of Defense and the NSA. And so we'll never know.
The blockchain technology was like, it was developed by the military. Like if we were getting hit with a nuclear attack, that the systems would still operate and they could send out information and stuff like that. But like, I don't know, are they behind it, or is it an employee that was involved in one of these projects that took that technology and then dumped it in, to the public? And then obviously, Satoshi's wallet has 1.1 million.
You mean it's not Craig Wright?
No, that guy's a joke. But either way, like it's out there. It's not going to be stopped. And the other, conspiracy I have, right, is our media is so tightly controlled, right? And, you wake up one day and all of a sudden the Bitcoin price is being shown next to the price of gold, oil as a commodity. Who made that decision to start putting the Bitcoin price on CNBC? So then I'm like, that's like the only weird, like super weird thing I have. I'm like, I was like, ooh, someone's behind this, where it's in the media, because if they didn't want it, they could just Bitcoin price and just like, oh, it's just their made up price, and all you legitimize it when you start putting it on the money network, with Mad Money, and it's on the ticker symbol. And so there's some stuff going on with that. There's some powers to be that want it.
It's also very interesting watching Gary Gensler over the years, and MIT's got a lot of skeptical things happening with the ETH Foundation, but even them coming out and classifying it as a commodity multiple times. We just had a judge in the Uniswap decision for, I think that was last month. The judge classified Bitcoin, although he classified Bitcoin and Ethereum as both commodities. I do not look at Ethereum as a commodity. It doesn't trade the same, doesn't function the same. I think the commodity value comes from.
Terrible. I've tried to sell it. Like, you can't even sell it via ATMs because the transaction fees, you don't know where they're going to be.
$300.
And I'm confused because I'm like, I don't know how the exchanges, maybe they already own it and they place it in your wallet and they're not actually moving it. Because like, I don't know how they sell it to you for such little fees, because when you actually try to sell it in Ethereum via an ATM machine or whatever, the fees just, and you have to.
I would imagine exchanges have a similar functionality to Lightning, where they have like their own node or whatever.
It's very impractical selling it. The fees are all over the place. It's just unstable. I've never used like Ethereum besides trying to buy another coin or whatever, like in real life. Like, Bitcoin and USDT I'm using all the time. They have real world function. So.
Do you use at all? Are you in any crypto altcoins? Are you
not currently?
Maxi now?
Bitcoin and then USDT for my operations and stuff like that. I told you I was back in the day. I should have held on because I was in early on. I was just dollar cost averaging into everything back in the day, and I still too early. But another thing I got to advocate is like, when things blow up, which they could happen very shortly, you got to have your Bitcoin in cold storage and, Trezor, Cold Card. And then another good one, if you have a lot of money, is called Casa Bitcoin. So it's a multi-signature and it's an app. So you use your phone as one multi-sig to unlock it. And then the other one is you can connect your Trezor or Ledger as the third key to unlock it. And it's pretty legit, and you can have your money on your phone if you're like worried about, hey, I'm going to lose my seed phrase.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you just have, because you need three, they would need all three parts.
Two of the three to unlock. And then if you lose one of them, there's like a backup way to get it. So that's like a really good product. Like, I just think they have bad marketing. Not a lot of people know about it. But
yeah, I think I saw them at Bitcoin Miami. Were they on stage?
All the big like Bitcoiners, and people ask me, I'm like, I recommend that. I use that personally. That's a good product to have, because most people, they're just like have their money on these exchanges or like a hot wallet app. And I'm like, these are gonna go under. And my other question is, I don't know, but so Binance owns Trust Wallet, right?
Yes.
What if Binance goes under? What happens to Trust Wallet and all the billions of dollars on Trust Wallet? Is that untouchable? Are they separate entities, or would that go down with Binance? Is kind of a question I have.
Yeah, I mean, it would lose its trust. I would say that is, I don't trust Trust Wallet. The only reason why I've ever used Trust Wallet was like 2020, when I was like buying, like I didn't understand the markets yet. And I was like, I'm going to pick up SafeMoon, right? That's like where you got your shit coins, right? Like, hey, I'm going to go gamble on a slot machine. That is the only reason why I've ever used, and then actually Pancake Swap, I did use through that for a minute and staked, which actually made a lot of money off that.
I had the one meme client. I don't do that stuff. I shouldn't even tell this story, but I have a friend who does extremely well. Everything this guy touched just makes a lot early in Tesla. Like, just this guy's made a lot of money, and he messages me and he's like, hey, you need to get into this like fuck Joe Biden coin or whatnot. And I was like, I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, how do I? And he's like, oh, it's a coin. He's like, I can't tell you the details, but he's like, you gotta get in this coin. And I was like, all right. And I was like, how do I buy it? And I'm like, I gotta use Pancake Swap. I spent like an hour or two trying to figure out how to convert all this stuff. I went to their website. It was just super janky.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, are you sure? But I'm like, this guy just like never loses money. So I was like, all right. So like, I bought some, I loaded up. I had forgot about it. And like the next week, it was announced that the race car driver, the guy where the whole fuck Joe Biden chant came from, was getting sponsored by this coin. They dropped a whole brand new website they had waiting to go, and they were putting it on the car. And the freaking coin was going bananas. And the NASCAR had approved it. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is going to be. That's
wild, because that's definitely not around.
So I was like, dude, this is gonna be like freaking Dogecoin. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then the White House got a hold of that, called NASCAR, and was like, you better get rid of the fuck Joe Biden coin. And they got rid of it in a week, and the thing collapsed.
Jesus.
But
everybody has their meme coin story,
I gotta get I have one buddy he's been in crypto a really long time, and it's just he has like made and lost fortunes in cryptos that it would just make you sick. Like he was super early into Bitcoin, and he gave his cousin for graduating like what would be like $500,000 in Bitcoin, and the kid bought video games with it online. Like he I forgot how much Bitcoin, but it was, we were like,
ouch, man.
Like,
yeah, I mean, I probably would have done the same thing.
Graduation present. He bought that, and then he lost a bet. He had all his Dogecoin like before it was big, and he lost a bet, and he paid this guy in his Dogecoin, and that Dogecoin would have been $1 million. And
I messed up with Dogecoin. Was my first meme coin.
Yeah,
and that's actually why I started crypto, because I got in that Dogecoin at like a tenth of a penny.
Yeah.
But I completely sold out by 1 penny, because I was like, I had made so much money, and I was in college, so I was like, I saw it go from I think I put $300 into it, and turned into like well over 10K. And so I was like, all right. So I took it all out, and I was like, there's no way this keeps going. And then Elon Musk jumped on the hype train, and it goes to 75 cents. So that would have been hundreds.
It's tough for anything that go like that right now. I just feel like the economy is really bad. Like there's no liquidity. People don't have the free money flowing right now.
Well, there's no personal. Consumers are out of money.
Everyone's kind of
credit's all-time high.
Tapped out, and that's why I'm like, I'm like interested to see what happens right now, because like we're at a very precarious place financially, and like these banks are all in trouble. Like Bank of America just reported like $105 billion loss on their mortgage securities. 700 banks are on like the FDIC watch list right now, on death list. And what's crazy is like the Silicon Valley Bank, like that went under. That was going to start the recession, because all these major tech companies, all their payrolls, everyone was screwed. And you're only supposed to be covered up to 250,000. They bailed out everyone. They made everyone whole. And the FDIC, they have a fund, right, that all the banks pay into to bail out troubled banks. Yeah. They used more than what was in that fund to bail out one bank, because it was like the second largest bankruptcy ever. And they used the whole fund on one bank, and now you have 700 plus banks that are in trouble, right? And they're already out of money, because everyone's like, oh, it didn't cost the taxpayer anything because they used that fund. Well, the fund's gone now. So the next bank that goes under, it's going to be taxpayer money. And what I think is going to happen is they're just going to pretty much nationalize the banking system in this next crisis, because it's all the same banks, all the same players. It's the same, real estate bubble as last time. And when real estate goes under, we're just looking at, great financial crisis 2.0, and they're just going to print trillions of dollars, recapitalize the banks, nationalize them. And then once the government owns the banks, it's like, oh, you own a gun company, you own this, you're not going to get loans. And
not at all. Which is, you just made me look up the reverse repo market, because I wanted to see how much money is. And we're down to 1.2 trillion in there now, which it used to be at 2.2, actually more than that, 2.5. So down 50%. And, if you track from reverse repo was set up in 2021 I'm looking at. Yeah. So right after. Yeah. So this is, once that's out, we're running out of options. Like you said, it's kind of like they've been just kicking the can down the road. Something's going to break. Arthur Hayes just had
do you think pretty soon things are going to kick off with the recession and all the printing and stuff? Or do you think they have more time before this downturn hits?
To be honest, I think what will happen is just what always happens, is they're just going to print more money. Yeah. So something's going to break. We're going to have a crazy week in the markets. It's going to get bought up quick. We're going to print whatever. We have $1.25 trillion in just interest debt alone that will be starting next year. It's like, how do we pay that off? The only way is by printing more money. Yeah. And so, there's no outcome where I see us not printing money, because that means if we don't print, we're going to default. And we've never defaulted in the history.
Yeah, it's easier to print more money than, the time to have raised the interest rates and fixed things is long gone. Now we are like, no man's land, and it's just keep printing money until things fail.
we can be optimistic and say they're going to budget. But like you said, yeah, it's print until failure, which is just extremely bullish on Bitcoin as a whole. But then it brings me back to the question of, okay, why was this created? Because the crypto market's essentially starting to grasp global liquidity, which is why I'm watching the national banks, because they do start issuing their own stable currency. This means that when the feds go to print, theoretically, this means even though we're only at a 5% 30-year treasury that, currently today, if we do see something break and then, inflation run rampant again, and we see like a Paul Volcker.
Wait. Did you see at 5% treasury, Bank of America is 45 times leveraged? And if you increase that, like, where is Bank of America's leverage? And this is one of the big four. One of the biggest banks in America is 45x leveraged right now. If you are a U.S. consumer leveraged at 45x, you're the drunk guy playing roulette in Vegas right now. And this is the bank. This is the financial foundation of our system. And they're 45x right now. So we're gonna have one of these scenes where you're never gonna get cut off your money. They're gonna just print so much money that your money in the bank's just gonna get devalued. But yeah, I think the government. The problem is it's gonna be so politically unpopular to bail out the banks because we already have done it and people were appalled. There's no way they can do a bank bailout 2.0 where these guys are all going to be taking their bonuses and vacations again with the American public. The government's going to have to come in and they're going to have to nationalize the banks and these big companies because, the stomach from the U.S. population, they're not going to have it. And that's when you're really going to have the total control of like, hey, this is who gets the money and who doesn't. It's not going to be private anymore,
Yeah, which sounds very fascist, it's which is, what's really is like, yeah, it's an interesting concept. What I honestly just believe we can print, like we printed $9 trillion in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means when all else fails, you go to war. I don't think we're at that point yet. That's Gerald Salente's famous quote is, okay, what's the effect of this? This is, okay, we go to war. Maybe the United States never is in it, but we proxy it. We start, for example, Ukraine, who's profiting off the liquid financial gas, who's going to be profiting off the wheat when we rebuild and restructure and we consume their natural resources. There's a million different things that can happen geopolitically over the next few years. But the one thing I very much agree with you here is, people that think BRICS is just going to overtake this US dollar. I think the US dollar still got a lot of strength for time to come. And I think over the next 5 years,
they're too weak. They're not united enough. In the US, we can come in and pick them off. And I saw one of your posts. You read The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. That was required reading for me in Government 101 freshman year in college.
Really?
And I obviously went to a liberal school because I read it. And I was like, whoa, I didn't know any of this. I was more interested in other things. I was like, this is crazy. And then, I'm, in Latin America, and I probably shouldn't say this, but, I'm partying with Noriega's nephew. And, and I just watched, they have the new CIA spy ops thing on Netflix, which is how Noriega rose to power.
I have to watch that. I didn't know they dropped that.
Yeah, because you made that post, and I was commenting on that because I was actually asking the Panamanians the other day because Torres, he got the Panama Canal back from Carter, I believe, and he was wildly popular, and he was Noriega's mentor, and he went up on a plane, it got blown up, and Noriega rose to power.
The same plane as it was the same plane as who was the other prime minister or president?
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys.
There was two people on that plane.
A long list of people that got on planes. But that guy
exactly.
wasn't like an anti-US guy. So I kind of think Noriega might have taken him out. So but it's very
watch the YouTube monetization. You know what I'm saying?
We've controlled Latin America for a very long time, and kind of Bitcoin's their way of getting back. And you look at what's happening in El Salvador and the negative BS press they get, and they try to have they funded a little anti-Bitcoin rally there. It's almost comical now how bad it is. And now El Salvador is just gaslighting everyone. They're like, oh, we're going to have freedom of speech platforms down here. They're making all these moves. And I'm like, what are they going to do to El Salvador? But I have, friends that are kind of involved. They say, the Bitcoin adoption stuff, it's overhyped down there right now. They have a long way to go, but they're making all the right all the right moves down there. And I would say that Bitcoin adoption is very weak in Latin America right now. Like you're not going to see it being used at a lot of places. It's mostly people speculating in crypto. There's not a ton of adoption from my firsthand perspective. So, and also, have you read? You probably read The Fourth Turning, right?
No, I actually have that on order though. I am about to read that. I've been recommended that by like so many people at this point.
It's an unbelievable book.
I'm reading Destined for War right now. I just finished the 100-year marathon. But yeah, so where I'm at right now is like it's very interesting because you're saying that I completely agree with you. Like our adoption, this is still early on, and I don't think people that are like betting on the crypto markets, they really just don't understand geopolitics. And geopolitics, like the downfall of a dollar, like a reserve currency, doesn't happen in 2 years. It happens over 3-4 decades. And so it's like, what does that mean if Bitcoin's in slow adoption, which you're 100% right? Okay, I got a 10-15 outlook on that. But then you realize what's happening to BRICS and like, they're all saying in the yuan, which like you've already mentioned in this live, is the US dollar is still going to remain dominant for years to come. Which is why I'm like, okay, we're going to get out. There's easily one more money printing cycle. And I just wouldn't be shocked if it went to banks. I think, when people start losing their jobs and they need money, they're going to quickly pivot from being like, we need a new leader, but also, hey, I need that $2,000. Please send it to me,
Well, you got to read The Fourth Turning. It goes over, everything's cyclical. We're going into, a violent kind of revolutionary phase, war. There's going to be a lot of change, and and people have normalcy bias. They don't want to, everyone's busy with their daily lives. They don't want to look at all this stuff. So, and then people aren't prepared for it when it hits, and there's going to be very few people prepared for what's coming. And that's why I'm also a big believer. I'm like, hey, if you're into Bitcoin, gold, silver, all this stuff, I'm like, you got to be looking at getting a Plan B residency or multi-jurisdictional. Because, say a big war did happen, like forget the Bitcoin. Like you got to be in the right safe place, and you got to have, and just like a COVID, if you weren't a resident or citizen of any of these other countries, you couldn't leave your country. You were stuck there. And and if you read some of these books, they detail like, hey, they're going to make up the COVIDs. There's going to be an exit tax for leaving. They're going to make it harder and harder for you to leave your country as the wealthy and the productive people try to leave to go to places like El Salvador or places where they're going to be zero tax. And my kind of idea, like in the future, is like countries are going to be more run like businesses. And hey, we're going to be able to protect you, do this and this, and this is what our fee is. And because Bitcoin, they can't forcibly take Bitcoin from you. So they're going to have to offer you a service, right? And you see these countries that are going to adopt it earlier, like in El Salvador, or like, hey, it's going to be safe. There's going to be zero taxes. It's going to be freedom of speech, and people are going to vote with their feet, and they're going to, pay in Bitcoin to do this. And as the countries where all the wealth is, the Western, the European countries, they're going to be slowly trying to stop this flow of money leaving. And China's done the same thing. They don't want their wealth leaving either. And they have like the $50,000, take your maximum that you can expatriate every year. So,
and it's only going to get worse. I cover that a lot in China right now too. I mean, people just ignore how bad the real estate market is there. Their local financial government vehicles, they're going to bail out everybody on a state level. But Xi Jinping, over the last 10 years, we all know how he's moving from authoritarianism really quickly into totalitarianism with the suppression of speech, the ideologies. He wants to control that narrative, and he's very this is where economists are betting right now. Is Beijing going to print money for consumers to spend more? And it's like the bigger outlook is like, he'll bail out the private money, but he's going to slowly continue to centralize that more and more. Well, and you see the private sector on a decline.
China holds all the cards. They hold all the manufacturing. You look at COVID and stuff. We couldn't even produce it here. We were literally like, telling American companies there, like, you got to like,
it's going to take us 5 years to build. Yeah,
you know why you can't make the mass here is because the raw materials are made over there. You look at, all the commodities, rare earth metals all come from China, and they don't. They're all refined in China. So they might not be produced in China, but they all get shipped. All this stuff gets shipped to China. It gets refined there, and then it comes everywhere else. They're just getting monopolies in all of these sectors, and we let it happen because we didn't want to pollute the U.S. because a lot of these are dirty industries. But if we go into a war or anything, they're like US back in the day. They control all the manufacturing. And I kind of like thought that China is going to team up with Russia one day and they're going to launch a gold-backed currency. But when they do that, that's wartime, right? So they've been sitting on this, and the US has been manipulating the price of gold down via our markets. China, Russia, Singapore, all these countries know this, and they are buying gold at a discount. They're not going to go, hey, you're manipulating, you're making it cheaper. So all these countries that are our enemies are buying gold at a discount because we're manipulating the price down because we don't want to show weakness in the dollar. And then one day, hey, they're going to launch a gold-backed currency and start trading in that. And the dollar could just go boom, like overnight if China and Russia launched a gold-backed currency. But they know things are going to get rough when that happens. So I think, maybe if China takes Taiwan and then we get into a conflict there, then they're going to be like, well, we're not buying dollars anymore. We're launching this currency. But they're not just going to come out of nowhere and do it. I think there'll be some.
It would be last resort, like you said.
I
would agree to that extent. Yeah, I'm not like with the XRP maximalists that think that it's going to be like, oh, like they're going to launch this in January. It's coming. It's like, no, because there's also the issues of like India is like one of the largest GDPs on BRICS as well. And they're making more and more connections with the United States with the semiconductor manufacturing, because we do realize the manufacturing is centralized to China. This is something that's going to take 5 to 10, 15, 20 years to develop.
Factories take a very long time.
Yeah.
You can't just move them overnight. And then, like, as I said, you need the raw materials too.
Which is interesting, because then you realize, what's China relying on? A lot of their agriculture and energy. And so it's like, we need each other. So it's like, if Taiwan happens, that's not good for anybody. That's like going to be detrimental. Like, we're going to be here. I think you'll very quickly see, whether or not there's a fucking draft, first off, excuse my language, but, like, give me a couple more years or cut off my leg before that happens. But, it's an interesting.
That's why you want to get your Plan B residency. Hit me up, and
I'm gonna need one.
And it's like I always laugh. I'm like, hey, the next time people are riding and beating each other up over toilet paper, I'll be drinking a pina colada down in Panama or something. Like like you don't have to go down with the ship. And the other thing I get annoyed, like I post some of these videos on TikTok, and everyone's like, you're going to run away. You're not going to stick and fight. I was like, who is standing up right now? I was like, you're doing it from a faceless TikTok account. I'm like, I'm going out, putting my face out there and saying some truth bombs. And I'm like, you're doing it from your faceless account. I'm like, no one's organizing anything. No one's trying to like stand up. And I'm like, hey, like people should protect their families. They should have an option. And especially like a lot of this content, might not be available in the future. And I saw that you posted, the Philly looting videos. And I had posted like a PG more version because I'm like, hey, I'm worried about getting like shut down. And I think my thing got flagged on like Instagram. They took it down.
I don't post on Instagram anymore. I got banned for like 6 months.
So they like banned it on that, and there's no one getting beat up or whatever. And what will happen is things are going to get worse and worse. And like you're not going to know, because no one's going to, that all that information is just not going to, it's going to be censored, or you'll be able to post it, but it won't go viral or just be shadow banned. And I've noticed, like, if I said certain names or whatnot, you won't get 0 views on it.
I've been getting hit hard because I cover a lot of the CIA stuff, like color revolutions. And even though it's all like real based facts that are like disclosed from them, it's like Freedom of Information Act. I'm not the guy that's connecting the weird dots or the story of the Oswing. That's like one of the coolest CIA stories. It's also really messed up, but it's like, that was a real event. Like, and why can't we talk about this history without getting taken? But then you have to, that's the unfortunate line of freedom of speech, is like, where do you stand? Because you have, very hard right conservatives, MAGAs, that very easily drive into conspiracy, and they can't come out of that. So like, I know people that have literally made videos on Oprah eating children in Maui. That's where all the missing kids are. And they're like freaking out about why their accounts are banned. I'm like, because you can't just come out and defame somebody like that with like 0 evidence. So like, where's the line on like what you can approach and what you can't say? And then you realize what happened with the Twitter files on how much is the FBI actually stepping in saying, okay, we don't want this because it makes us look bad politically. And I think that's just like a moral argument that will never settle, because everybody's got a separate ideology.
if you look at the math, everything's heading in the wrong direction. And the problem, what we're going to be entering recession, depression pretty soon with when these banks go under, and all this money is going to get printed. And unfortunately, there's such little financial education now, and I think a lot of it's done on purpose, where they don't teach people any financial education. Like you have to be self-taught or have a parent that has educated you on a certain level to know, what's going on. So people are financially illiterate, and everyone is like, "Oh, capitalism." What we have right now isn't really capitalism. It's capitalism for the poor and socialism for the rich. So every time the big corporations, the banks, they get in trouble, they get bailed out. But if you're a small business owner, you're on your own and you are failing or being successful. There's no one bailing you out. And so the problem is when this next crash happens, they're going to blame capitalism, and you're going to have a huge rise in socialism and communism type stuff. And you're going to see higher taxes on the rich. You're going to see the whole eat the rich movement really get going in this next crash. And a lot of these, because there's going to be so many disenfranchised people. And I'm looking at it like in California, like, you're making $22 an hour, your life's miserable. Like you're living in a one bedroom.
I just moved
with 4 people. Your grocery bills are insane. Like you can't afford to do anything. So people are going to want an enemy, and they're going to be blaming, capitalism and it's not we don't really have pure capitalism right now. And you're going to get a rise in socialism, and it's just going to make things way worse. And if you look at the producers in this country, like the top 1%, like the amount of taxes they're already paying, like if you look at the math, it's astronomical. Like they're paying like 50-60% of all the federal taxes is like the 1% of income producers or earners. So, and you start taxing more, they're going to move. They're going to move to other countries. And a lot of these companies have become virtual businesses. They're going to move to different countries. And that's when you're going to see the US government trying to stop it. And that's why I'm a big believer. Like, hey, if you want to make the jump and get a plan B, or, to diversify your locations, like now's the time, because it's going to get a lot harder to do in the future. And it's going to get a lot more expensive, because Paraguay has a really cheap, easy residency program. But once they realize they have a golden ticket and things go, crazy, they're going to start selling these things. Because Panama had a really easy one. Now it's a $400,000 real estate investment. And you used to be able to do it for like $5,000. So once they realize, oh, this is popular, all these Americans and Europeans want to get here, they're going to jack the price up. So you got to make moves now.
It'll happen. Yeah. I think you made a very good point there, which is, because a lot of my content, you can only say so much in a minute to 2 minutes. And, you said capitalism is for the poor, socialism is for the rich. And that's very powerful. Love that. I'm going to have to take that. That's a great way to put it. Because I look at it as a kleptocracy. It's like you have, just the world's ran by thieves right now. Politicians are all conflict of interest between private and government, which isn't supposed to be taking place. But, what you pointed out was the economic, let's say the uneducation from the economic sector just to our kids, our youth. And I think this is a blame on also Western propaganda as well. It's like a lot of people just believe that the educational system is just, it's trash. Like there's nothing we can do to fix it. And it's like, yeah, we're at this point. But if you go to your local town hall meetings, I don't know why, but it's because if you got 500 parents and you went to your town hall meeting, or you went to your PTSAs on a local scale to these schools, the way the schools makes money is they get subsidized from the government per kid for showing up per school. And it's if you all showed up and said, hey, we want change in the curriculum, or else our kids are not showing up for even a week, they're easily going to fold. I have a family of teachers, and they get mad at, they work in California. And it's the only people that show up to those conventions, there'll be 1 or 2 people that are against it, or a small group of parents, but not enough. Right. Yeah. And so we fed through and we're very centralized in our media. And I know, this is a lot of people think that our vote doesn't even matter. And I feel that's a part of the ideology that they fed through us through social media. That's okay, well, nothing's going to change. It's just going to get worse. And so, you know what? I'm going to blame the rich, and I deserve my reparations. I deserve my $2,000 that the government's going to print. We need to tax them more, but they don't realize that, there's this huge movement on
that's your boss, and then he's going to have less money to pay you. And
it does. And that's not where it's exactly where
and that's where I go back to. There's no financial literacy. And I think a lot of it is on purpose. What I was going to get at is when you talk to people have more in common than they don't. In the media, everyone's diversifying along, politics. And I was having a conversation with, a friend from a different country that moved here, kind of during the Trump time period. And they're like, was it always this divisive? And I was like, no. I was growing up, like politics wasn't a big thing. Like we didn't talk about it a lot. And then if you went somewhere and you were at a party, like it wasn't a big deal. It was just like, oh, disagreement. And then when Trump, ran, it was like,
2016.
you can't even bring it up. And that's why the polls were so off, because people were like embarrassed to say they were voting for him because they were like, the media, portrayed him so, poorly and just miscoveraged everything. And because of that, I think that's why it was so shocking when he won. And, so, we're just getting pulled apart by the media right now, and we all have things in common. So
yeah, it's going to continue to divide us, which I know we've kind of scaled off the crypto conversation, but it all ties back into it.
No,
which
no,
is where,
I mean, everything. These are the driving factors of everything, and it's like, if you don't know this, you don't know that. You can't. If you're just gonna sit there with your blinders on and like you're just saying crypto, you got to look at the bigger picture.
I get so mad when people go like, "Why are you talking about politics?" I'm like, you realize like,
I have all these guys who are like, "Stay in your lane, Bitcoin capitalists." Like you're talking about politics. I'm like, everything's tied together, and like this is my channel. I can talk about whatever I want. And for the gold bugs out there,
yeah, they're trying to suppress you.
Well, and for the gold bugs out there, and the Peter Schiffs of the world, like I'm a big believer. I like gold and silver, but you got to own it physically. And when I finally threw the towel in and went all in on Bitcoin was during the Wall Street bets short squeeze on silver. And I had owned all those, silver stocks. I owned every gold and silver stock there was. I had a little bit, just a massive portfolio of it. And I'm like, I'm going to make 20, 30x when the system blows up. And I was like, they control this. Like, why would they let it blow up? And all of a sudden, like First Majestic, all these stocks are blowing up. And so I went to my Robinhood app. I use like Merrill Edge, but I was doing the options on all the stuff to do leverage. Yeah. All of a sudden, you go to Robinhood. You could no longer trade options on First Majestic, on all the silver stocks, on all this stuff. And it just stopped it dead in its, rally. And I'm connected to, all these bullion dealers. So no one had any stock. You couldn't buy it. And the premiums to buy physical were like 50% over what the actual price was. So it was just a joke, and the government was gaslighting. Like the price was literally going down, and then on all of the trading platforms, you couldn't either trade options. You had to have 100% collateral, and I'm like, you're never going to get the big payday on gold and silver mining stocks. You can own physical for a rainy day, but if I think they'll probably ban it, or you're going to have to sell it back to them in the future at a fixed rate or whatnot. It will be demonized for money laundering and whatnot. And that's when I really got into Bitcoin, because they can't control the price. And, all the paper gold stuff's just an absolute joke. And like the COMEX, like the leverage for like every ounce, like there's 200-300 contracts out there. And if you want a glimpse of how bad and corrupt the gold industry is, like when MF Global went under, they actually owned a bunch of physical gold. And in the bankruptcy proceedings, they owed all these people money, and they were owed this gold. But there were like 100 people, like for each bar of gold, that were owed it. Like it was absolutely, like they were just the words like rehypothecation. Oh my God. And like if there's any glimpse into how that gold thing set up, it's and if you look at the fine print, if you look at the fine print of the COMEX and you're buying and you want physical delivery, which is when the end game comes, people want the physical, right? In your contract on the COMEX, it says they don't have to pay you in physical and they can cash you out. So all of a sudden everyone wants a physical, and then they control the price. Like, no, and then here's your fiat.
Yeah, so they'll give you pennies on the dollar for what it's actually worth. Yeah, gold's, and I'm sure in 40 years we'll see one lawsuit come out for the $1 billion, for the manipulation, but if at all. But I kind of want to get your thoughts though, because I mean I agree with all this, but where do you stand? Are you familiar with like the altcoin market? Like I'm very curious to know your thoughts on things like an XRP, where these are like the largest communities that exist, and they're just trashing on Bitcoin's development nonstop. So like my perspective is like these are all like SaaS models, Web3 pumps, and now there's going to be software models that work, and they're going to get regulatory clarity, whatever it is, and they might succeed. But I'm very interested in your thoughts on these altcoins.
For me, I have very little time, and I'm operating like in the real world. I don't have time to go out and study everything. Like obviously, I know all the coins, but and unless I can use this coin in real world practice,
Yeah.
I'm not like, hey, this is great. If I can use it and I'm actually using it and it has a utility, then I'll talk about, hey, this has a function. But pretty much all the other coins are I've used just to speculate, to convert to another coin to speculate. I haven't used a lot, in the functions. And, I felt like an idiot during the NFT thing. I was like, everyone's making money but me. And, and I was going to a party. I was at this party, and like the guy that was designing all the Nelk Boys NFTs, like they're telling me about it, and everyone's kissing his ass at the party. And like, and I was there with a guy from Merrill Lynch, and he was telling me how he was speculating on all the NFTs. And I was like, shit, I should, be doing this. And the whole market, it was all BS. And people, what they don't understand is they fake trading volume on these things. So they list them, they're buying them back, so it looks like the price is going up and there's volume, and then you come in as a sucker and buy it. So unless you're kind of the originator on this stuff, you're not going to get money. And I don't know if this is true for you, but like, once you get to a certain level, like on TikTok and stuff, you start getting the calls from Dubai. And the guys that are launching coins, DAOs and stuff like that. And how it works is they give you a % of the coin and then you promote it. And once you get to a certain level in the influencing, you start getting, those calls. And I've looked at some of them. So there's some interesting projects, and I won't say no to everything, but if you're going to put your name on it, it's going to be out there forever. And you want to make sure.
Yeah, I fell for that early on. I don't do it. I haven't done it in like 2+ years at this point. But like when I first got into crypto, once you hit about that 60,000 follower mark up to about 120, all the influencers that I looked up to, because I thought these people were smart, they're driving nice cars, they've been in crypto, this was very early on in my career. And so they would hit me up and be like, hey, this is like the next project. I'm going to be advising on this. Like, you should get into this. And I'm like, and then, you should come on my show. And, so you're like, oh shoot, I'm about to make it to the big leagues. I'm going to get good interviews. I'm going to these are like the people I've watched, for years. I quickly realized after probably 6 months of like tokens, they're recommending me, hey, this is going to be a great project. They're going to do all these things. And then all of a sudden, and I never took the token allocation because I was always scared of the SEC repercussions. There was like a few that I did on it, but then I just was like, I'm just done with this. And I just started taking cash because I was just, to this day, I'm still like scared. Like I see people, I know influencers that do that all the time. And I'm like, I'm just like, I don't want to play that game with investment contracts. Right. And so, I left that 2 years ago. Unfortunately, I did get wrapped into it pretty quick.
What's the other guy on TikTok? Bare Naked Crypto. He was always on your ass about it.
Yeah, that dude's weird, but
he posts. He's like, like on Twitter. He's like, he goes and gets your old.
He's still from 2 years ago. He'll still and then the problem about him is he just won't ever tell me his real name because he does a lot of defaming. He says I'm paid by a lot of projects that I've never been paid by in my life, and so but it's the only way he was able to build a following, which sucks because he's a good trader. But his attitude's just trash. But whatever, I really don't care. It's all good.
You just admitted that you evolved, and like what I said is it's very tough to make money in the influencing unless you get involved in other coins. And I'm not going to say Bitcoin's a digital commodity. There's no other, but there's going to be interesting projects that come out, and like things that I think will be interesting is companies that want to go public, they need the Goldman Sachs, these market makers, and then they raise money in stocks. I think companies are going to be able to do that via like DAOs and stuff like that, where you're going to skip that and you could issue shares and go. But it's the same thing. Like there's so much risk, and I talked to this big real estate developer down in Latin America, and they wanted to do something like that where they were going to sell, a token. They're going to raise the money, and whoever's holding that token is going to get paid out a dividend of that, apartment complex they built. And there's going to be cool things, I think, with that in the future. But, for most part, people are so uneducated that, when people are all asking me like, what coin? And I'm just like, just buy Bitcoin. I was like, hey, if you're sophisticated and you're willing to risk some money, you can look at these other things. And also, and always go with your gut, because like, I'm very confident now because I've done a lot of dirty work and, in Bitcoin. And before I've ever spoken publicly, I've put a lot of work in, all over Latin America doing stuff. So I can speak from experience. And I remember I was down in Paraguay and, I'm talking to a guy, he made millions of dollars in Bitcoin early, having beers. And, and I like thought he knows more than I, he did really well. And he's like, where are you keeping all your Bitcoin? And I'm like, hey, just keeping it in cold storage. And he's like, oh man, there's this company called Celsius. I'm getting, these like 8-10%, returns. You got to check it out. And I asked one simple question. I said, what are they investing in to where they can pay you an 8% return where they got to be making 12-14%? And he couldn't answer that question. Fast forward. And he lost a substantial amount of money on that. And he was able to get, and then he had money on FTX and he got it off right before. And I had another friend of mine, he lost like 400 or 500. I have one crazy viral video about running SBF at the airport and just lost all this money. What would you do? I was using my friend's story because he lost like 400,000 or 500,000 on, FTX, and he wasn't even like trading. He's a very wealthy guy, and he thought the exchanges were going to last longer than the banks. So he just had it parked on there, and he didn't even know how to withdraw it. So he had money on finance, and like he trusted me enough. I helped him move, the money to like a ledger. But you know what? Don't listen to these. Sometimes like go with your gut if it doesn't make sense. And I remember I was at the Bitcoin conference, Miami. Celsius had the biggest booth. They had all these hot chicks working there, and boom.
They all do it. Yeah. And it's going to come back. That's the thing. So that's why I try to teach people now is like, look, this is Silicon Valley 2.0. These web 3 ventures are going to come in and they're going to do the same thing this next cycle. And you'll notice like 90% of creators aren't around anymore. And that's why I'm thankful I have the audience I have now. I've developed more into geopolitics and a lot of more things because I just wanted to learn and educate more and more. But now I monetized off just, ad revenue through videos. So it's like, I don't have to take the disgusting amount of and that's the thing. Like I'll make less money because I'm not going to promote these tokens like next cycle, but I'm also just going to call out the same influencers that did it last cycle. Like I'm just done with that. It's like, they know what they did. And it's like, they knew they were wrong when they got me into it. And they knew they were wrong when they get everybody else into it. Cause there's still influencers that are coming into that market. And so hopefully this next cycle, because there's a lot of good, by the way. Like I'm really involved in decentralized science. I think what scientists are doing with DAOs, there's a lot of really cool stuff. But you have to find that good. But the majority of these projects, the play to earn games, I love play to earn gaming. But the reality is not only do you have to successfully make a good game, you have to drive a great community and make good tokenomics. It's already hard enough to develop a good game, right? And people don't realize this. And then you have to look into, I teach how to read the vesting schedules. Okay, is it a 30% allocation? Is it a 40% allocation? Is it going to marketing? Is it going to VCs? Is it going to friends and family? Is it going to the treasury? What's the TGE? What's the unlock? And so it's kind of forced me back to, I've been forced back to Bitcoin. Like I tried everything and there's still a lot of good again, like I said, but
get right with Satoshi.
Well,
goes out, they get smashed, they come back. That's how
I think everybody will.
Now with the whole BitBoy drama.
Shit, I knew that was coming.
You know what? But people, talk all this shit. But I was like, they built, they're like one of the biggest names in YouTube. Like they built a successful, deal. But you saw what his fees were to get to talk about your coin on there. They're making like $30,000 an episode. But what's crazy, I didn't realize he didn't own it. Like he was literally like an employee and he got fired from his own show. I mean, it's just crazy.
Did you see that I flew out there and hosted it?
I didn't know if that was real. That's why I was bringing it up because someone, I think it was Crypto Chaos or something reposted that, and I wasn't sure if it was real. So I love Proper. Yeah, Crypto Chaos is awesome. Like one show for him.
Yeah, I flew out. I don't have any drama in this industry, like with any influencers. So I was like, they called me and they're like, hey, crazy things are happening. Can you fly out here? So I flew out there to go see what was happening. Because what's that?
Where are they located?
They're in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm in Florida. So it was like an hour flight. So I was like, okay, let me come up there and see what's happening. But yeah, long story short, I was there for literally 24 hours. And that morning of a lot of shit happened. They're like, hey, can you host today? I was like, okay, I'll be a guest today. And Twitter obviously loved that.
Did they ask you to be a full-time host or no? Just so it was like a one-time?
No, I just had conversations with them. I was going to see if anything would lead into. I was more interested in seeing what was happening behind the scenes. Like, are they in the wrong? Is Ben in the wrong? And unfortunately, I think that they're getting the shit end of the stick on this because they have a massive company there. It's huge, and it's like there's so many employees there. You're like, okay,
Now
did
they
they
don't
do
have
this in
any
their best
content.
interest?
Well, now
They don't. They're going to need to hire new hosts, and whether negotiations or whatever happen later on. But for me, like my content and my style is I'm not a BitBoy. I'm not a Ben. Like I'm not here to entertain you and tell you your product's going to 100x. Like I will go through each token. I'll go over the tokenomics and utility, but I'm very realistic.
That's what I was thinking because we're pretty similar. And I'm like, that would be a cool gig. It would probably pay pretty well. But it's like you're just gonna be sitting there talking about all these scam coins all day, and like obviously, like we want to talk about politics, like a lot of other stuff that's going on. And like I don't know if I could just do that content like all
I would
day.
have to have a separate show where they let me get that out. It's like, okay, I'll cover the news for the day, but I'm like, I'm someone that's like, okay, I'm not gonna like. I'm not like I have to approve what you're promoting. Like I'm not going to promote anything you want me to promote, right? Like it's so I don't know. I was just there for the day. It's been
Now,
weeks.
do they have someone filling in like every day, or is it just they're not producing anything?
They have like a whole team, so they've been producing every single day still. So they had the co-hosts and stuff, but Ben's like bashed on them and created his community and completely shat on them completely, even though he's the one that obviously cheated on his wife, relapsed on drugs.
Well, everyone's seen the video. Like he got arrested, like high on drugs.
Yeah. And yet somehow nobody supports the Hit Network. I'm like,
but for his deal is no one's there. No one knows the true story. But when you go out and do that, you look like you're the guilty party. Like it makes everything. It validates everything you're saying. Where if he would have just stayed, like, oh, these guys screwed me, he could have built his following back up. Easily.
He has.
He's gonna have a very like.
Have you kept up with that at all? He's killing it.
He is.
He's killing. He is. Like he has sucked the views out of it. And I believe they can actually probably turn around because I mean this is like they have a whole facility. Like they can get hosts, like they have what it is. If they get people to move to Atlanta, like honest, I'm surprised BitBoy did what he did because he was like threatening to move to Dubai. Like he has an insane setup there. And he owns 70% of the company.
Well, that's why
to lose your company, if you're a majority shareholder, like let's be real, you got to do some pretty bad things. I would imagine. It's
I just as like I'm just the guy making my own videos and stuff. I was like I didn't realize like how much people behind the network they had like making that stuff happen was pretty.
There's like 40 plus employees there.
But it's great because like if you want to cut up like for this clip, this is hard for us to like cut up and put on TikTok. But you look at all these viral videos; they're all interviews in person, and then they're cutting it up, throwing the the titles on them, and then going up. Now, have you ever interviewed like BitBoy?
No, I probably never will.
Big influencers have you had like contact with?
Every single one. I've only met BitBoy once. I met him like 2 years ago, but obviously Crypto Mason, Altcoin Daily, Crypto Wendio. I'm working with Crypto RSS now, who's George. He's got about 700,000 subs.
Okay.
So at this rate, like I'm connected indirectly to everybody, or I've met a lot of them.
Have you ever done anything with Crypto Cousin? He's pretty funny.
I haven't. I actually, he's fun. Talk about someone that's in the right place at the right time. Like the dude made so much money off Solana. I watched that whole process. I was like, oh, geez, oh my God. Like the dude literally made millions off Solana.
Yeah.
But I've never, he's actually someone I've never talked to or met.
No, I just found he says some funny shit. And
does he still post? I haven't seen he
doesn't post a lot, but he's pretty funny. Like he doesn't need to. But he's more of a trader. Yeah, I'm not, I talk about Bitcoin, I'm like, I'm not doing the day-to-day, but the people that do the day-to-day crypto stuff get a lot of followers because people are like, hey, how do I make money? Everyone's trying to get rich quick in this trading. And it's like, you have this once in a lifetime deal to own a piece of like the next internet. And, and I also say like, Michael Saylor, I'll rip this off from like Michael Saylor, but it's like, if you go back in the day, like, and you can just keep investing in Amazon, why would you, diversify and put it in the next, like what would be eBay? Like,
yeah,
you just buy Amazon and sit on it. And like, that's pretty much what, Bitcoin is. And the biggest like problem is with new people is they see the Bitcoin price at 27,000 or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, but I can buy XRP for like 20 cents or whatever," and they think
That
that
bugs me.
20 cents will go to $1, but like, but like that 27,000 can go to 500,000, and that 20 cents can go to zero. So that's kind of like the new
It
people.
could also only go to like
They
theory.
think
Like
they
they
can
say
make all
market
the
cap
money
doesn't
on
matter.
the small caps and get into the smaller players. But I'm like, if you would have just bought Amazon, it would have just gone up, split. You just sit in it, and that's pretty much what Bitcoin is, and it's going to be an incredible ride. But hey, I want to thank you for coming on. I'm going to try to do some more long form, content, because we can actually talk more about ideas than just, short form, 1 minute, 2 minute clips. And I just don't think there's enough of this content out there right now. There's not. You're not going to get any of this from the mainstream media. Maybe Tucker Carlson. He's, look at Tucker. He left Fox News, went to X. And now he's not held back on what he can say. I mean, his numbers are
Insane. 90 million a video. Like,
and,
it's like Mr. Beast numbers.
And it's just incredible what he's done. And he's interviewing like everyone I'd want to, like Javier Milei down in Argentina, wants to abolish the central bank, bring in dollars and Bitcoin. And you're just not going to get that news anywhere else. And I'm just curious, like, how long the government's going to tolerate X being actually like a free platform to post stuff, like, and with Tucker going crazy, like they've got something up their sleeves.
The media, they're trying to attack him. The SEC is now investigating the purchase. Are you kidding me? Like, they're like, they're going to continue to try to attack him.
The legacy media is just dead, and it's just like Elon and X, like, and they're obliterating it to the point where like he's making them a laughing stock. Like, it's comical.
Have you used Nostr yet, by the way?
No, no.
So that's interesting. That's blowing up in China right now, and it's a completely decentralized protocol. I saw it because of Jack Dorsey. They integrated Lightning Network, but essentially everybody runs their own virtual node, and it's impossible to shut down. And it's literally a complete decentralized web app that no token. The only token that's on it if you want to tip is Lightning Network, because again, like, why do you need a token? But like, it has your Spotify's, your Twitter, your TikTok, everything on one platform, and they're gaining millions
It's a decentralized social media.
Completely, but they did it the right way. You don't need a token.
Know that existed, because I'm so dumb. Like, I see people's like Nostr or whatever on their Twitters everywhere. I didn't know what it meant. I thought it was something. I thought it was their like Lightning node address or something.
Yeah, everybody thinks so.
And I was like, the internet needs this. We need decentralized social media, because like everything's getting banned. I was like, all our content like down the road will probably get banned. And I learned a lot of my whole Bitcoin thing from Max Kaiser and the Kaiser Report, and it was hosted by Russia Today. And they were the first, mainstream media to report on Bitcoin at $1, and we're covering it internationally. There's no one else doing that, and that's where I learned a lot of my, stuff. And YouTube deleted every single episode of Kaiser Report just because it's was from Russia Today.
Russia, yeah. So Nostr fixes that.
And that was literally one of the most prominent sources of Bitcoin information, covering it from the very beginning. And they deleted everything off of
There's
YouTube.
nowhere to get it. You can't access it at all.
Deleted. And Max Kaiser is the head financial
for
guru
El Salvador,
for President Nayib Bukele. And obviously, like, he's a huge target, and he has to be like a massive billionaire. Like, he's given away hundreds of millions. He gave Alex Jones like what would be 400, like hundreds of millions of dollars for the Bitcoin he lost. He gave Russell Brand 1,000 Bitcoin, which would be $26 million or dollars, and he's given away like so much. Like, his amount of Bitcoin he has to be astronomical. And I don't know if you looked at that guy's story, but like, Wall Street trader, retired, moved to Paris. He came back. He started the Hollywood Stock Exchange. He invented the cryptocurrency. He has the freaking patent on it. And it was like the Hollywood Stock Exchange was like a social media site where you could bet, and you had like a virtual coin, and you could say, hey, this movie was good or whatever. It got bought by Cantor Fitzgerald for like $22 million. But at the time, that's like hundreds of millions. And then they were going to blow it up and use all his tech. And then Cantor Fitzgerald was located in the World Trade Center and got hit on 9/11, and 90% of their employees died. So the whole project got buried and nothing ever came of his company getting bought.
Wow.
And
that I did not know. I need to look that. I need to look at, that's a great
no, he talks
video.
about it. And then he all of a sudden he had this guy who was like a kind of NSA like cryptographer come on the show and tell him about Bitcoin, and with his background inventing like crypto and having the patents, he's like, oh, this is awesome, and started buying it. And then I mean, he's got to have one of the largest stashes of Bitcoin in the world, and he's been great because like he was
I don't listen to Max Kaiser a lot because the media like trash. The only time I've seen him was when it was at the event when he was screaming "fuck Elon."
Oh,
and I was like, this guy's crazy.
He's the best, and he never got in all the other coins. Like he kind of was like talking about Ethereum, and then he went Bitcoin maxi because he realized what Bitcoin was, and he's really, he's billionaire. Like he doesn't need to be doing this anymore. He's really just going out to educate people, and he's going to the right places to do it. And like I think people, if they're looking for someone to listen to that, it's not trying to financially gain from you. Like Max Kaiser's, one of them, maybe Michael Saylor's, and just not a lot of good people to listen to online these days, though.
That's inspiration. Yeah, because that's like, and I know we're wrapping up here, but that's like my next step is I'm in talks with the company right now. And I'm really hoping they pull the trigger on this, but I want to be able to, like in the DeSci community, I want to go to these laboratories that are utilizing AI and building the products. I want to go see the laboratories' search results and their discoveries and how they're analyzing that data in real time, whether it's in South Africa, the Amazon, et cetera, and show like the real world value that they're utilizing. And it's because of crypto. Mm-hmm. And Max Kaiser, what they're doing it with the volcanic mempools, because I cover mempools a lot because we talked about the mempool jockeying. We need more decentralization, that aspect. And I still to this day think El Salvador in 10 years is going to be, they're going to break out of poverty. That's where geopolitics come in. And
it's going to be one of the craziest success stories, I think.
Yes.
And they building that Bitcoin city, there's going to be zero taxes.
Like,
I know some people are moving there and stuff. And I spent a lot of time in Panama, right, next door to it. And, Panamanian governments run the country into the ground. They have, the canal, which generates a couple $1 billion, which the U.S. gave them. And they like, if you look at the numbers, I think like 60% of the country works for the government. It's just a giant scam. Everyone works for the government, everyone's cousin, whatever. And it's all no-show jobs. And the U.S. government gave them like some billions in COVID. No one ever saw it. They had the worst lockdowns I've ever seen. Pretty much like the party areas, like 80-90% of all businesses went under for restaurants and bars because there was no stimulus. They forced everyone closed. And they were having like Panama's usually, it's like one of the most successful places. All the expats have left for other places and they're just running in the country. And you just look at El Salvador and they're making all the right moves and they're attracting all the right capital. And like Panama, they got rid of the friendly nations visa for, expats and crypto bros to come and get residency. So all of that money disappeared. And there's consequences to running your government bad. And that's why I'm saying, like, in the future, when people can vote with Bitcoin and the governments can't steal your money, you're going to have to run your country like a business. And, and El Salvador is the first to recognize that. They're cleaning up crime. They're going to make a tax-free zone. But they have a lot of opposition and they're a very small country, right? Where, them buying Bitcoin, like it's not as much as even a company in the US buying it. But Javier Milei in like Argentina, if he gets elected and they start buying Bitcoin, like massive, South American country with huge exports, it has dire consequences for the dollar and that whole dynamic. And you're going to see like an anti-Javier Milei campaign like you've never seen to get stop.
They don't want him. Yeah. I mean,
man.
Yeah. Come on. Tuck was interviewing him. The Biden administration's like, I'm worried about them in life.
Argentina or Brazil, I mean, it's game over. Because all these countries that are, too chicken shit are on the sideline. Once they see that, they're like, well, it's just game theory. We're not going to stand by while everyone gets rich. And the other thing is when people want to buy Bitcoin, everyone's looking at the price. You don't look at the price. You look at the hash rate, which is the amount of Bitcoin being like the computational power behind the network of Bitcoin. And the hash rate just hit an all-time high. That means there's more machines and computers ever mining the network, which is they're searching for new blocks and they're validating payments. So when I send Bitcoin to you, they generate that fee. Just like when you send a bank transfer, the bank takes fees, right?
Yeah.
And that is an all-time high. So price is a lagging indicator because people are investing for the long term, you know, in Bitcoin, and that's securing the network and is just growing right now. And that's why I'm extremely, you know, bullish on Bitcoin, and everyone's just looking at the price. And it's just like, don't look at the price.
They look at the price and then they're doing exactly what you're saying is that one, they don't realize what's happening behind the scene. The media portrays it. It's like, it's bad for the environment when it can actually be what lowers emissions by like 8% by 2030. You have Lightning Network layer 2's Web 5 by Jack Dorsey kills Web 3 as a whole. Web 3 venture capitalists. I mean, like, I don't know if you've looked into have you looked into Web 5 at all?
No.
Crazy. So built on top of Bitcoin, completely open source. It delivers decentralized identities, decentralized nodes, and any Web 2 company can build a Web 3 application without the need of integrating a token. If you want a token, use Bitcoin, set up a node through Lightning Network, whatever you want to do. And it's like that realization, I think this next cycle, like Bitcoin layer 2s are going to pop off because people are going to want to access that liquidity.
Well, that's why I'm also like the mining, like when they added, I forgot they added some deal where you could send information on Bitcoin and overwhelm the network. So the mining fees went like astronomical, and people can convey text and images via the Bitcoin network. And as we enter a more censored world, that becomes very valuable. And you're going to need more machines online because you're going to need to transmit a lot more information. And I think Bitcoin is going to be used in ways of communications we never thought possible, like where people are transacting and communicating on it. And it's just a giant truth bomb on the system. And
you're pissing off a lot of people right now.
I know. I was like, hopefully we don't get too many, you know, views on this, but it's just like life's too short. And I think Bitcoin's the truth. I think people are attracted to the truth, and that's why, you know, you see Tucker Carlson and Bitcoin, all these things becoming extremely successful, and
pulled me back.
Media collapsing. Like, you're probably getting more views than CNN on your TikTok. Like, they're getting 50,000 views per an episode. Like, you're getting millions of views. No one's watching that stuff. It's just government funded.
And then you realize, though, it's like that's what pulled me back to Bitcoin is like I realized how corrupted this industry was, and it's really no different than Silicon Valley or Wall Street. So I'm like, we have the world's greatest commodity that people classify as digital gold, but it is essentially digital oil as well when it can access this negative energy market, and they're going to build on it. But hey, thank you for having me on today. We could talk for hours. I would love to do this again.
That was awesome. I knew we were gonna have a good thing because I've seen your content, and I know that we kind of were on the same path. But it was great having you. We'll have to check in like a month or two and see where everything's at, and I'm sure we'll have some crazy updates because I think we're gonna have some turbulence in the economy pretty soon.
Yeah. And if you just, want the insights on how the insider shit works in this industry, I'm here to expose anything and everything. So just let me know. And I got a lot of really cool stuff coming up. So I'm excited. We'll probably be on the New York Stock Exchange here at Floor pretty soon, which might be pretty cool. So cross the fingers.
Oh, wow. That'd be awesome.
So we'll be doing some cool stuff. But again, thank you for having me, man.
Yeah.
And looking forward to the next show.
All right.